Chapter 1. Initial Suspicion. It all started with little things, so small that at first, I convinced myself I was imagining them. She'd come home later than usual, her excuses growing more generic as the weeks went by. Work ran late, she'd say, or I had to grab dinner with a coworker. But there was something in her voice, a hesitance, a fleeting glance away from my eyes, that made me pause. At night, when we lay side by side in bed, I'd hear her phone buzz softly on the nightstand. When I reached over to check it, she'd snatch it up before I could even unlock the screen. "Just work emails," she'd explain with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The lie was almost convincing, if you didn't know her well enough to recognize the cracks. We'd been married for 7 years, and in those years, we'd built a life together filled with laughter, shared dreams, and countless inside jokes. Our relationship wasn't perfect, we argued sometimes, sure, but we always found our way back to each other. Or so I thought. But now, as I watched her retreat further into herself, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just the late nights or the guarded glances. It was the way she seemed distant, like she was living in a world I couldn't access anymore. And no matter how hard I tried to bridge the gap, the distance only grew wider. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I decided to confront her. "What's been going on lately?" I asked casually, trying to keep my tone light. "You seem distracted." She froze mid-sip of her wine glass, her hand trembling slightly as she set it down. For a moment, I thought she might tell me the truth. Instead, she forced a smile and said, "Nothing, honey. Just work stuff." That night, as she drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and replaying the conversation in my mind. Was I losing my mind? Or was I right to suspect that something deeper was brewing beneath the surface? Chapter 2. Confrontation. The confrontation came sooner than I expected, though in hindsight, maybe it was inevitable. On a Friday afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to follow her after work, telling myself it was just to surprise her with dinner. But deep down, I knew I wanted answers. As I waited outside her office building, I saw her step out, not alone, but with another man. They were laughing together, their shoulders touching in a way that felt far too familiar. My chest tightened so much I thought I might pass out. I followed them from a distance, my heart pounding in my ears, until they disappeared into a coffee shop. When she finally came home that night, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Where were you today?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room, as if searching for an escape route. "Just grabbing dinner with a coworker," she said quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. "A coworker who happens to be male?" I shot back, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "And why didn't you tell me?" Her silence was deafening. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The late nights, the guarded glances, the buzzing phone. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, leaving me breathless and reeling. Chapter 3. Evidence of infidelity. After she stormed out of the house, tears streaming down her face, I collapsed onto the couch, overwhelmed by a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could this happen? We were supposed to be partners, best friends, lovers. Betrayal doesn't just break trust, it fractures your entire sense of self. With shaking hands, I picked up her purse, which lay carelessly on the dining table. Inside, I found a receipt from the very coffee shop where I'd seen her earlier. Beneath it was a folded piece of paper, a note written in his handwriting. "Can't wait to see you again soon." The words blurred before my eyes as anger surged through me like wildfire. Later, unable to stop myself, I checked her phone. Passwords had always been our unspoken agreement not to invade each other's privacy. But desperation clouded any sense of respect. There they were, texts exchanged under the guise of work updates. Photos of them smiling together, arms draped casually around each other. Each message felt like another stab to the heart. I sank to the floor, clutching the phone in my hands, as reality crashed down around me. She had betrayed me, not just as a husband but as a partner, a friend, a confidant. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating, and yet I knew I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Chapter 4. Emotional impact. For days I floated through life in a haze of shock and disbelief. Every memory we shared now carried a bitter taste. Did she feel the same way about me as she did about him? Was I blind? Or was I simply undeserving? Self-doubt consumed me, whispering cruel truths late at night. Maybe she left because I wasn't enough. Maybe I failed her somehow. Anger bubbled up unexpectedly, sometimes directed at her, sometimes at myself. Why hadn't I noticed sooner? What had I done wrong? Grief hit harder than anything I'd ever experienced. Crying became second nature, whether alone in the shower or driving down empty streets. Even mundane tasks felt monumental. Brushing my teeth, making breakfast, answering emails. All of it required more effort than it should have. Sleep eluded me, replaced by restless nights spent replaying conversations in my head. Food lost its flavor, and even simple pleasures like reading or watching TV felt hollow. Friends urged me to talk to someone, but I resisted at first. Therapy sounded like admitting defeat, like saying I couldn't handle it on my own. Eventually, though, I realized I needed help. Talking to a professional gave me tools to process the whirlwind of emotions and slowly begin rebuilding my shattered sense of self. Chapter 5. Relationship context. We weren't perfect, but we weren't broken either, not until now. We met in college, two kids chasing dreams too big for small-town lives. She loved how I supported her ambitions, and I admired her determination. Over the years, we built a life together filled with laughter, travel, and countless inside jokes. Sure, arguments happened, but they never lingered long. Marriage wasn't easy, but it was worth it, or so I believed. Looking back, maybe we stopped communicating as deeply as we used to. Work pressures crept in, responsibilities multiplied, and somewhere along the line, we forgot to nurture what once made us whole. Still, infidelity? That seemed unthinkable. Even during our toughest moments, I never imagined she'd look elsewhere for love, comfort, or connection. Now, as I grappled with the aftermath of her betrayal, I wondered if there had been warning signs I'd missed. Had I ignored red flags in favor of preserving the illusion of happiness? Chapter 6. Aftermath. In the weeks following the discovery, every aspect of my life unraveled. Sleep eluded me, replaced by restless nights spent replaying conversations in my head. Food lost its flavor, and even simple tasks felt insurmountable. Friends noticed the change in me, their concerned questions piercing through my carefully constructed facade of normalcy. Work suffered too. Colleagues commented on my distraction, and deadlines slipped past unnoticed. For the first time, I considered leaving the job I'd poured my heart into. Life without her felt foreign, like living in someone else's body. Divorce loomed large, but so did reconciliation. Could love survive betrayal, or was trust irreparable? Therapy became my lifeline during this period. Talking to a neutral party helped me untangle the web of emotions threatening to consume me. Through sessions, I learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painful. But it's also necessary. With time, I began to see glimpses of hope amidst the despair. Chapter 7. Personal growth. Slowly, painfully, I began piecing myself back together. Therapy taught me coping mechanisms and helped me process the whirlwind of emotions. Exercise became my outlet, a way to channel anger into action. Running 5 miles became less about fitness and more about proving to myself that I could still move forward, even when it hurt. New friendships blossomed unexpectedly. A coworker invited me to join a hiking group, and soon I found solace in nature's quiet beauty. Online communities offered support from people who understood exactly what I was going through. Their stories gave me hope, reminding me that healing takes time but is possible. Eventually, I started dating again, not because I wanted to replace her, but because I deserved happiness. Love isn't exclusive. It grows, evolves, and adapts. And while part of me will always carry the scars of betrayal, I learned to accept them as part of my journey. Chapter 8. Reflection. Sitting here today, I can honestly say I'm grateful for the experience. Not because it was easy, but because it forced me to grow. I learned that relationships require effort from both sides, that communication is key, and that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about freeing yourself. Friends often ask if I regret staying in therapy or opening up online. To them, I say yes, but not in the way they think. Regret lingers only when you refuse to learn from pain. Instead, I choose gratitude for the people who stood by me, for the lessons I absorbed, and for the strength I discovered within myself. Life may have fallen apart, but in rebuilding, I found pieces of myself I never knew existed.